A new book from President Obama's longtime top speechwriter takes us behind the scenes of the White House, especially focusing on 10 pivotal days in June of 2015, which included the president's response to the Supreme Court decision on Obamacare, a court decision, the high court decision on same-sex marriage, but most memorably, his speech at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, after the racist shooting of 9 worshipers, the killing of those 9, including the pastor. Speechwriter Cody Keenan describing the dramatic tension of collaborating with President Obama on the concept for the speech and then repeated drafts up until the very last moment, including the president's unrehearsed decision to break into singing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
It was remarkable. And joining us now is Cody Keenan, former chief speechwriter to President Obama in and out of office, and author of Grace, President Obama and 10 Days in the Battle for America. Cody, it's so good to see you. Congratulations. This is an
Thank you. Nice to see you.
It's just a beautiful book.
Thank you.
And to a writer, to any writer, any reader, to understand the collaboration, you know, the way you worked with President Obama on speeches and the arc of your experience there in the White House. So let's start first with those moments. June 26, 2016, the former president's reluctance to speak about yet another shooting, his last-minute decision to sing that day in the church. Describe how that came about.
Yeah, you nailed it. Our relationship really was a collaboration. He always expected not a perfect draft, but something he could work with. This was a tough one, you know, to eulogize the pastor who was murdered in a racist massacre, and to talk about guns and the Confederate flag and the long history of racism all in one eulogy made for a tough speech. And I talk pretty openly in the book about what a challenge it was at times to write for President Obama. And the draft I handed him was okay, but not really up to par. And he, you know, I'd spent 3 days agonizing over it. He rewrote it in 3 hours and added the lyrics to Amazing Grace. And it was the morning of this speech. We had just left the White House where he talked on marriage equality. And on the helicopter, he said, if it feels right, I might sing it.
And, of course, the rest of the staff didn't even know. Most of the staff did not know. No one in the church, of course, knew that this was going to happen. You know, you also write about the State of the Union address and how music, specifically Miles Davis, helped with that speech.
That was a new and unexpected one. It was my third State of the Union address for him. Was a pretty long one and pretty packed with everything. And he called me up to talk about it and said, you know, he said, do you listen to Miles Davis? And I said, not really. And he said, well, the thing about Miles Davis is, you know, it's the notes you don't play. It's the space between, it's the silences. So tonight, you know, I want you to go home and pour a drink and listen to some Miles Davis. Don't do any work. And then come back here tomorrow and find me the silences. And it actually made sense. You know, you want parts of the speech to come down from 10 to 6 to 7 to 4. And, that was my entree into jazz.
Well, one of my favorite albums was Roundabout Midnight. We can all go home and listen to that tonight. I was also struck by your writing that Obama told you one time about writing. Read James Baldwin when you're stuck. Listen to John Coltrane when you're not. That's quite an editor's point.
Yeah, more jazz. There was 2 different points. You know, Baldwin is just searing moral clarity. There is a very real sense of what's right and what's wrong. He just kind of cuts through BS like a hot knife through butter, and that's useful when you're struggling with a speech. With Coltrane, it was, you know, I hadn't listened to Coltrane before he said that, but it was more freeform, and it kind of inspires creativity. And sometimes I'd listen to that and just kind of let my fingers fly.
So how challenging was it, as you point out in the book, that President Obama had described himself in the 2008 campaign as a better speechwriter than my speechwriters? You know, we have famous White House speechwriters, Peggy Noonan, memorably, you know, the Normandy speech in 1984 for Ronald Reagan, and the speech when the Challenger blew up, you know, poetry for a performer. But you're writing for a president who could often write prose that sounded like poetry.
Yeah, he backed up those words. It did make it hard, you know. He wanted a draft that he could play with and work with, but we still wanted to impress the boss, and my entire team and I would just kind of tear ourselves apart to try to write a near perfect draft to get to him. But we always knew he could take it to a higher place. And all of the best moments in his speeches, whether it was Selma or Charleston, came from his moral imagination. And he'd often take him to places that we couldn't reach on our own.
How hard is it for speechwriters now, and for other presidents, but for Joe Biden, how hard is it, do you think, to bring the nation together with a major speech or a series of speeches? Can that be done by most presidents?
I think that's an awful lot of weight to put onto speechwriters. I think it's very rare that a speech is going to create a sense of national unity, but there are moments. There's context around it. You mentioned the Challenger, President Bush after 9/11. Maybe President Obama after Charleston, but it's fleeting as long as people don't act on those impulses. We always approach the speech as if we could change people's minds, maybe help people see something different. That was exactly what the Amazing Grace speech was about. But it's something that you have to keep at and keep working at.
Well, Cody Keenan, there's so much to ask you about, but this book is a great introduction and reintroduction to the Obama White House in a way we haven't seen it before. So thank you so much, and congratulations again.